friends, welcome to the second part of the chapter, Microorganisms, Friend and Foe. In the part 1 of the video, we have already discussed what is a microorganism, what are the different types of microbes, and how are microorganisms helpful to us. If you have not gone through the video, I would suggest you to go through the part 1 of the chapter first before proceeding with this video. So let's start unpacking the cool bag. In this part of the video, we will discuss how microbes are harmful to us. What kind of different diseases do they cause in human beings and plants? We will also discuss what is food poisoning and what are the different ways by which food can be preserved. We will conclude the chapter with a detailed study on the nitrogen cycle. Let us see the chapter outline in detail. There are certain microorganisms which are harmful to us. They cause diseases in our bodies. Such disease-causing microorganisms are called pathogens. This term is quite important. What are pathogens? Pathogens are the disease-causing microorganisms. And how do these pathogens transmit? They transmit through different means like air, water, direct contact with the infected person, also through carriers of pathogen like housefly. Okay, so air, for example, when you cough or you sneeze and if you are infected, those droplets, tiny droplets which come out from your mouth can enter another body through their nose or through their mouth, and they can cause disease into them because the pathogen is getting transmitted this way. Okay. Similarly, if you get in direct contact with an infected person, for example, if you handshake with a person who has COVID, okay, you can get COVID too. Okay, and also diseases get transmitted through carriers like housefly. So if you do not keep your food covered, and if a housefly, suppose it sat on the excreta of an infected person and then it sits on your food, so through his body the housefly is actually transmitting the pathogen to your body. So these are the different ways how pathogens are transmitted, and they are transmitted only in the case of communicable diseases, or these are also known as infectious disease or contagious diseases. Please keep in mind, not all diseases are communicable. There are certain diseases which can spread from an infected person to a healthy person through different means of transmission like air, water, food, physical contact, or through carriers. Certain examples of communicable diseases are cholera, common cold, chickenpox, and tuberculosis. Now, a question might come as how can we prevent the spread of communicable diseases? The first thing is you should keep your mouth closed when you're sneezing or coughing. Now in this COVID situation, we see people wearing masks, right? So both the people are wearing masks who has COVID and who do not have COVID. Because if you are healthy and you're wearing mask, those pathogens cannot travel from a diseased person to you. Okay. Another way is by isolating yourself if you are infected. You should keep yourself isolated from another healthy person if you are infected, so that the pathogens do not travel by any mode to that person. Also, we should make sure that all the things that an infected person is using, his clothes or utensils, the food, the water that he or she is consuming, should not be shared with healthy people. Another way is to keep the food covered. So next question is, why is it advisable to keep the food covered? We have already seen that how pathogens can actually transmit through carriers like housefly via food, and that is why it is advisable to keep the food covered. Now, what are these carriers? These carriers can be insects or some small animals which carry the disease causing microbes on their bodies, and they transfer the same through food to human beings. Example is housefly. A very common example of a disease that gets transmitted through carrier is malaria. Malaria, many times it is also deadly. Okay, and this is transmitted through female Anopheles mosquito. So malaria is caused by a protozoan, and that parasite is carried through this female Anopheles mosquito. Another disease is dengue, which is carried by female Aedes mosquito. And these mosquitoes, they breed in standing water. So it is always advised to make sure that no water get collected, okay, openly. This can be dirty water or clean water. Mosquitoes even breed in clean water. So if you are not using your coolers during summers, you should make sure that they are dry. During rainy season, when puddles are formed, the government must look that the puddles are cleaned and there shouldn't be any puddles. The roads are well maintained. Let us now have a look on the common human diseases caused by microbes called pathogens. So we have taken this table from your NCERT book, and here the diseases are categorized on the basis of the preventive measures. So let us now have a look on the diseases one by one. The first one is tuberculosis, also called TB. It is caused by a bacteria, and the name of the bacterium is Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Friends, we have put the name of the microorganism in our description box. Please do check that. The mode of transmission is air. The next one is measles. It is a viral disease, that is, it is caused by a virus, and the name of the virus is Rubeola virus. The mode of transmission is air. The next one is chicken pox. It is again a viral disease, and the name of the microorganism is VZV, which stands for Varicella-zoster virus. Again, the name is there in the description box. It is transmitted through air or through contact with the infected person. The next one is polio, which is caused by virus, and the name of the virus is poliovirus. So it's quite easy to remember. And the mode of transmission is air or water. Now, what are the general preventive measures for these diseases? The first one is we need to keep the person in isolation. We need to keep the personal belongings of the patient away from another healthy person, and vaccination has to be given at a suitable stage. So we have been vaccinated for these 4 diseases. Now friends, the other common disease which lies under this bracket is COVID, the very common COVID, which is a pandemic currently. And for COVID also, you are actually advised to keep social distancing, keep the patient under isolation or under quarantine, and you're advised to keep your mouth closed using a mask. So this disease I felt we need to discuss here because it's very common nowadays, and that is COVID, and it is caused by coronavirus, and it is transmitted through air and through contact with the infected person. And we do not have a vaccine developed currently, so it has become a pandemic because it is very gradually increasing and infecting people. And why is this happening? Because we already know that the mode of transmission is air and personal physical contact. So if we try to keep person under isolation, that disease shouldn't spread, right? But the problem is the symptoms of COVID, they developed many times after you already have the disease and you don't know that you are the carrier of the pathogen, and unknowingly you have already transmitted the disease to many healthy people before quarantining yourself. Let us now discuss the other two diseases. So the next one is cholera. It is caused by bacteria and the name of the bacteria is Vibrio cholerae. The mode of transmission of the disease is water or food. Another disease in this bracket is typhoid. It is again a bacterial disease caused by the bacteria Salmonella Typhi, and it is transmitted through water. So for any kind of disease which is transmitted through water or through food, it is very important to maintain personal hygiene and good sanitary habits. Okay, the food that you are consuming shouldn't be uncovered. It should be properly cooked. The water that you are drinking should be boiled. It should be clean. Okay, and we have vaccination for these two diseases as well. Other disease in this bracket is Hepatitis B. It is again a viral disease and the virus name is HBV virus, which is Hepatitis B virus. The mode of transmission is water and the general preventive measure is to drink boiled water and get vaccinated. So we have a vaccination developed for Hepatitis B. The other new bracket is the commonly known malaria. Malaria is caused by a protozoa and it is a protozoan parasite called Plasmodium. Okay, this is quite important. And the mode of transmission is, we already discussed, the female Anopheles mosquito. So what it does is, the female Anopheles mosquito carries the protozoan parasite called Plasmodium on its body, and when it sits on the food and that food is consumed, it gets transmitted to another person. The common preventive measures for this is to use a mosquito net and mosquito repellents, spray insecticides and control breeding of mosquitoes. This is very important, as I already mentioned that these mosquitoes breed even in clean standing water. So we should make sure that there is no standing water with us and water is not getting collected in coolers or puddles. So we can control the breeding of mosquitoes, which is the carrier of this disease. Now we will discuss the common plant diseases caused by microbes. The first one is citrus canker. So as the name suggests, this disease is basically in citrus fruits like lemon. So in the picture you can see these black dots here on the lemon as well as the leaves. This is citrus canker. It is caused by bacteria and it can be transmitted to other plants through air. The next one is rust of wheat. This is common in the leaves of wheat where you see these golden color patches. Okay, this rust color patches, which is due to some fungal infection. It is caused by fungi and it can be transmitted to other wheat plants through air and seeds. The next is a disease in okra or okra is also commonly known as bhindi or lady finger. So in this, the disease is yellow vein mosaic of okra. So you can see these leaves, there are many yellow veins. It's completely covered with these yellow veins. Okay, so this is yellow vein mosaic of okra. This is a viral disease and it gets transmitted through insects. So the insects, they keep on sitting from one plant to another plant. So when they sit on the leaves of one okra plant, they can carry this virus to another okra plant. Friends, have you ever observed that you have eaten outside and the next day you have bad stomach ache? That is a sign of food poisoning. So the consumption of food that is spoiled by microbes can lead to food poisoning, and food poisoning is really serious. It can lead to some serious illness, and in acute cases it can also lead to death. So how does this happen? The microbes that grow on the food, they start producing toxic substances which are poisons, which make the food poisonous, and they cause serious illness and even death. So it is very important to preserve food, and also it is very important to eat or consume only clean food. Let us now discuss some common ways how food is preserved. The first one is through chemical method. So chemicals are used to check the growth of microorganisms, and these chemicals are called preservatives. Some common chemicals which are used as preservatives are sodium benzoate and sodium metabisulfite. So if you see any packed food item and if you check on the ingredients, you will commonly see that there are preservatives added to those packed food. They check the growth of microorganisms and prevent the food from getting spoiled. The other common method which we use in our homes also is preservation using common salt. So common salt is a very good preservative. If you're eating non-veg, you must have seen that meat and fish, they are marinated. Okay, they are marinated using salt or even curd. And why it is done? This is done to check the growth of bacteria. Also, you have seen that when we make pickles, or how we try to preserve the avla or tamarind, we use again salt for doing that. Other commonly used method of preserving food at home, also in industries, is using sugar. How does sugar preserve food? It actually reduces the moisture content. So when the food is dry, okay, when the moisture is reduced, the probability of growing of harmful bacteria gets reduced. So it actually acts as a microbe inhibitor. So commonly, if you see jams, jellies, squashes, these are preserved using sugar. And what happens when your jam actually gets very old? You see that water, it becomes watery, right? So it is because it starts, that sugar, actually the effect of sugar gets reduced and it starts to get poisoned. The preservative actually is no more acting on it. So it is advised that when these jams or jellies, they become very old, you should not consume them. The other method of food preservation is using oil and vinegar. So whenever we have cut vegetables, we already have fish and meat, uncooked fish and meat with us, and we want to preserve it for long, we add oil and vinegar to it. Both of them, they act as growth inhibitor for harmful bacteria. They inhibit growth of harmful bacteria. Vegetables, fruits, fish and meat are preserved using this method. The other very important method which is used in industries is heat and cold treatment. So what is this? First of all, we heat that product and then suddenly we make it cool. Okay, so heating or boiling is actually killing the microbes, and then lowering the temperature is further inhibiting growth of microbes. Pasteurization is one form of heat and cold treatment. We will discuss this. What actually is this method called pasteurization. The next method of food preservation is proper airtight storage and packing. You have seen dry fruits and vegetables. If you order them online, they come under airtight packets. So this is to prevent the attack of microbes on them. Okay, now let us see what is pasteurization. This is a process which was discovered by Louis Pasteur, and very commonly known product which is pasteurized is milk. So what is this? It is the process of heating milk. Remember, pasteurization is a heat and cold treatment. So we will be both heating it and then cooling it. Okay. So first of all, we are heating it. So it is a process of heating milk to about 70 degrees Celsius for 15 to 30 seconds. So it is done for a very small duration of time at a very high temperature, 70 degrees Celsius. And then we suddenly chill it. Suddenly the temperature is lowered, okay? And then it is stored. So as you see, when we are boiling it, it is actually killing the microbes, and then again when we are chilling it, it is inhibiting growth of microbes. So pasteurization prevents the growth of microbes and makes it free from harmful microbes. This is a very important term, and it is a very common question asked in your exam. So be thorough with the temperature, with the duration, okay, as well as the temperature for which you need to heat it, and also both the process heating as well as cooling, and what is happening when you are heating it and what is happening when you are chilling the milk. We will now discuss what is nitrogen fixation. So friends, we already discussed this term in brief in our first chapter, crop production and management. But here we will be taking it in a little more detail. So nitrogen fixation is the process of converting atmospheric nitrogen into nitrogenous compounds. What kind of nitrogenous compounds? Like nitrates and ammonia. Why don't we take the atmospheric nitrogen directly? Because soil cannot absorb nitrogen in the atmospheric nitrogen form. It has to be converted into nitrates and ammonia. Similarly, plants, they need these nitrogenous compounds only. Plants, they absorb nitrogen in this form only. We already talked about the leguminous plant, and leguminous plants like beans, peas, pulses, okay, these kind of plants, in their root nodules, they have Rhizobium bacteria. So in this picture, you see we have the root of a leguminous plant, and these circles are actually the root nodules. Okay, these root nodules, they contain the bacteria called Rhizobium bacteria. This bacteria is actually helpful in converting atmospheric nitrogen to these kinds of nitrogen compounds like nitrates and ammonia. This bacteria has a symbiotic relationship. You will hear this word very often, symbiotic. So symbiotic relationship or a symbiotic association is a mutually beneficial relationship. Okay, because these plants need this bacterium for nitrogen fixation, and this bacteria needs these root nodules because they carry the food. Actually, they take the food requirements for the growth of this bacteria from the plant roots only. So also we can fix nitrogen through the action of lightning. So when you have lightning during rains, it actually helps in fixing the atmospheric nitrogen. So now we will discuss nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen cycle is very important from your examination perspective. So we will discuss now what actually is this nitrogen cycle. Friends, we already know that atmosphere contains 78% of nitrogen. Right? Atmosphere contains 78% of nitrogen. And we already studied about nitrogen fixation, wherein we are actually converting atmospheric nitrogen into nitrogenous compounds by the help of rhizobium or blue-green algae or through lightning. So, when this atmospheric nitrogen is getting converted into nitrogenous compounds, does it mean that the proportion of nitrogen in the atmosphere is reducing? No. The amount of atmospheric nitrogen is always constant and preserved. It means there must be a cycle from where this atmospheric nitrogen is getting converted into nitrogenous compounds, and this again in the compound form should be broken down into nitrogenous into atmospheric nitrogen or the gaseous nitrogen. But how does it happen? We will discuss this while we learn the nitrogen cycle. So this is the atmospheric nitrogen. This is taken by the nitrogen fixing bacteria, as we read, the rhizobium bacterium or the blue-green algae. This is taken and converted into nitrogenous compounds. Now we have these nitrogenous compounds in the soil. This is taken by the plants through their roots, and the plants are eaten by animals or the human beings. Now what happens after we eat them? We produce nitrogenous waste. This happens while we excrete or when animals die. So again, nitrogenous waste is in the form of certain compounds of nitrogen. This is again absorbed by the soil, and these compounds of nitrogen are acted upon by certain bacteria again, which convert these compounds to gaseous nitrogen, and the nitrogen is then returned back to the atmosphere, and we have the amount of nitrogen in the atmosphere preserved as 78%. Now, another cycle can be these nitrogenous compounds, which are fixed by the blue-green algae or rhizobium here, can be acted upon by certain bacteria which break them into gaseous nitrogen, and they might not be absorbed by the plants, right? This might not be absorbed by the plants but can be acted upon certain bacteria which convert them into gaseous nitrogen, and this is again released back into the atmosphere. Third way is, we already discussed that nitrogen fixation can also happen naturally by the lightning process. So lightning fixes nitrogen, compounds of nitrogen. Now the other part remains the same. Either it can be taken up by the plants and then by animals, and then nitrogenous waste again absorbed by the soil, which are acted upon by this bacteria. Or simply the nitrogen fixed through lightning can be absorbed by the bacteria and converted into gaseous nitrogen, and this can again be released into the atmosphere, balancing it to 78% of nitrogen in the atmosphere. So this is your nitrogen cycle. It's very easy to remember if you understand this. Okay. So these are the three ways how your nitrogen remains constant in the atmosphere. Friends, with this we have come to the end of this chapter. If you have any queries, please feel free to drop down your queries in the comment box or mail us on our official email ID, which is school.bag9295@gmail.com. Also, please follow our Instagram page for all notifications and some cool tricks to handle your exams. Thank you. See you soon.